cover a couple of things here
do the
today.
origin story.
Yeah. So you're kind of like a spokesperson for the NRA.
Not official spokesperson.
Not official.
No.
Unofficial.
No,
But you are a member of the NRA? Do they
Yes.
recognize you? Do they appreciate you? Like, how does that work?
Okay, so the way it started, I'm going to start from the beginning.
Okay.
All right. So I had a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, who called me up one day and was like, do you want to go shooting? And I was like, because at the time I really wasn't pro-gun. And this was I was around 23,
How old are you
24.
now?
I'm 34.
So this is 10 years ago?
Yeah. And I hesitated a little bit because my background growing up, like, I didn't grow up with guns in the house. No one in my family had a gun. And for me, the idea and the notion of being a young black male with a gun, I always saw it through the lens of, gangbanger, drug dealer, so forth and so on. So that's the mindset I had with respect to firearms. Unconsciously, right? I didn't even realize it, wasn't even conscious of it until I started getting into this very heavy and realized, okay, wow, I was thinking like that, didn't realize it. And so, but at the same time, I told myself, why am I afraid of essentially what is an inanimate object, right? So I think to myself, I'm like, all right, I really don't want to go. I'm a little terrified, but you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do it. And so I remember getting to the range. We get to the range and we walk into the door, and then I hear the door for where the actual bays are, and I hear the pop, pop, pop go off. And I'm like, holy crap, this is actually happening. And so I kind of had this nervousness, but I'm with my friend, right? And so I don't want my friend to feel like, okay, you're acting kind of like a bitch, right? So I kind of kept it to myself. We get to the counter. We do all the paperwork requisite paperwork, liability forms, all that. And he has his gun. We get some ammo. We go to the lane. I remember it was the very last lane. It was, the name of the range was Top Gun in Houston. And so we go to the very last range. He gives me kind of like a brief instruction about how to shoot the gun, how to load it, so forth and so on. And so at that point, I remember picking up the gun, terrified, not knowing what to expect, not knowing what was going to happen. So I remember picking it up. It was a little Taurus PT-111 Millennium in .40 caliber. And this was a subcompact. Probably not the best first time shooting gun.
It's a big fucking gun.
Well, the gun itself was small but the caliber, exactly.
Powerful.
Yeah.
A lot of kick.
Exactly. So my experience, if anybody who watched that as a gun person would be like, oh, this is not going to end well. So I remember standing at the bay and taking the gun and pointing it and shooting it. And I remember just the concussive force, the explosion, the gun dancing in my hand. And I was like, holy crap, that was terrifying. Then I shot it again. I'm like, I like this shit. and the weird thing is, and not in the way that most people think, the nerdy aspect of my brain kicked in.
Right.
I'm like, holy crap, like I'm taking this projectile and I'm launching it, right? Several feet. And I just, because the second shot allowed me to realize what just happened. I just contained an explosion in my hand.
Right.
I'm like, if you don't find that amazing, you don't have a pulse.
It's amazing. The thing that people are bothered by is what comes with it and how people use it. Mm-hmm. And I think an analogy that's a fair analogy but people reject is driving cars and a lot of these fucking psychos that have been running over people in the street. I mean, it just happened again in Berlin.
Yeah.
Or somewhere in Germany. Some guy ran a bunch of people over and then blew his brains out. It's an object, right? It's a thing that you use.
Yeah, and I'm a huge car guy too. So,
I am as well.
Yeah,
I love cars. I mean, if someone said we have to ban cars because people started running people over with cars, they'd be like, well, okay. I think we're dealing with a whole bunch of problems, and there's a bunch of things that I think we could probably agree on. Mm-hmm. One of the things we can agree on is all these mass shootings are horrific.
Absolutely.
They're terrifying. Mm-hmm. It's an evil, terrible thing that... Here's another thing. No NRA members are doing that. That's one of the things that's really kind of fucked up about people getting angry at the NRA.
Yeah.
We've never had a mass shooting ever.
That I can recall that was done by an NRA member?
I looked. I tried to find one. I can't find a mass shooting that was perpetrated by an NRA member.
And I think it's... So the biggest problem that a lot of gun owners, especially NRA members, have is the conversation that's being had is basically coloring or actually forgetting the human element behind those 3 letters.
Mm-hmm.
The NRA isn't like this demigod that just sits in the cloud of Olympia, and then there's just one big guy that just is orchestrating this entire thing.
Yeah.
You're talking 5 million people.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a member. I'm a gun owner, right? That's who I am, along with 5 million other people who are that way. And then there are a ton of other people who think they're NRA members and aren't. And then a ton of other people who probably don't mind being NRA members. They just haven't gotten around to doing it and getting a membership.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of those people, and I'm saying that just to be safe, they're good people.
I think there's quite a few good people. The people that have perpetrated all these mass shootings are definitely not good people. But what's wrong with them? Well, I'll tell you what's not wrong with them. Guns. It's not guns that are wrong with them.
Mm-hmm.
They use the guns to express what's wrong with them. And everybody wants to look at the object, which I get.
What's easier?
Well, it is easier, and it's something that everyone's pointing to. Like, why do you need an AR-15?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you need a this? Why do you need a that? These are good questions. Why do you need these things? Why do I need that fucking samurai sword over there? I don't.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you need?
Yeah. But,
okay.
And that's another thing, too, though. And I've said it before, I think we are a victim of our own success in this country, right? I do think this is the greatest country in the world. But the problem with that is this country was built on an ideological foundation that I think it aids in our ability to be as great as we are. But we live in a world now where people don't see the necessity for something that was never supposed to be seen through the lens of necessity in the first place. The Second Amendment doesn't give me a right. It preserves something that already existed. But what happens is we have a culture of people who look at the Second Amendment as a privilege, not a right. They look at it as a privilege. So that's why they say, well, why do you need that? Well, why do you need more than 10 rounds? Why do you need this? Why do you need that? And I'm like, first of all, we're framing the entire conversation under need when that's not what the Second Amendment is about. It's a right that I've already had. It's a natural right that I had the moment that I stepped foot on this earth as a person. The right to self-defense is universal.
Yeah, and